Hi, welcome to class number 2 in our beginning Python tutorial. Essentially what we're going to look at today is with variables in Python. We think of a variable as a container for data. So we have a variable, it has a name and it has contents. And that's what we're going to learn about today is how Python treats variables, how we can use variables in simple programs, and we'll also probably pick up a little more of the print function because we're going to be printing these things out into the console because that's the easiest way to run a program while we're in Python itself, and that is what we're going to accomplish as soon as I shut this off. Alright, so without further ado, let's get on to the desktop. Okay, we're looking at the command console here. I upped the font size just a little bit because I wanted everybody to be able to read it, and so hopefully you shouldn't have any problems. If you do, please let me know and we'll go on from there. But first of all, we need to get into the Python programming environment, and as we learned last time, the way that we do that is we type the word Python into the command line. So we just type Python, hit enter, and now it tells us what version of Python we have, but it also opens up the Python programming interface for the command line. And so now we have the 3 arrows, the blinking cursor. We are currently in the Python programming environment. Now let's create a variable, and in Python, because it's such a loosely typed language, it's very easy to create a variable. Sometimes it's too easy. We're going to give the variable a name first of all. Now there are as many ways of naming variables as there are programming environments and languages and programmers. I'm going to use an older method of naming variables. I'm going to start off with an abbreviation of the data type that the variable holds, whether it's text, whether it's numbers, whether it's decimal numbers, what it is. I'm going to abbreviate that and start the variable name with that. And then I'm going to add a variable name that means something to the program. And this is really important. This is not only important for Python, but it's important for programming in general. If you ever have any desire to be a developer of any kind, name your variables things that make sense, because when you go back and read your code 2 years later to update it, you're going to say, what was variable X? And so it's very, very, very important that you name your variables things that apply. Name it, for example, if you're writing a code about bicycles, name it seat style as opposed to the letter Y. Okay, does that make sense? You want to give your variables names that apply to what they hold, that describe their contents, and that apply to the program. And also, like I said, I start mine off with an abbreviation of the data type. Python doesn't care what type of data you put into a variable, so it's important that you keep track, and that's why I name my variables like this. Now, you don't have to name this. There are some rules. This is not one of them. The rules, on the other hand, are very simple. You cannot name a variable starting off with a capital letter. We type in variable names in what's called camel case. Because you can't start off with a capital letter, and because you cannot have spaces between words, if your variable has multiple words in the name, then what we're going to do in this case is I'm going to put integer data into this variable. So I'm going to start off int. That's the type of data I'm going to put in the integer. If you're familiar with integers, basically it's a number without a decimal. It's a whole number. And then I'm going to call this integer, let's see, what's a good thing to call it? I'm going to call it number of apples. Now you'll notice I capitalized the words, but I didn't put spaces. Because of Python's structure in any programming language, pretty much they're not going to let you use spaces in the names. So the names have to be all one word, but basically to make it more readable, we use what's called camel case. You know, uppercase and lowercase. Well, camel case is putting capital letters in the start of each word and then not putting spaces in, because it makes it much more readable when you're not using spaces. So there's our variable name, number of apples, and we're going to assign that a value. We use the equal sign, and we're going to say 5 because we have 5 apples. Fair enough. So integer 5 is not a decimal, it's an integer. Number of apples, all one word in camel case, it's easy to read, and then we're going to hit enter. Now it seemed like nothing happened, but in fact Python created a variable called number of apples, or int number of apples, and it assigned it the value of 5. Basically what it says is, I've got this container and its name is int number of apples, and inside is the number 5. So we're going to create another variable, and we're going to call this one int number of oranges. Spell. And we're going to say we have 3 oranges. So same thing, we've created another container in memory, int number of oranges, and we assigned it the value of 3. So the first value is still 5, the second value is still 3. We have 2 variables created in memory. Hit enter, and now we're going to do one more, and we're going to say int, and we're going to call this one fruit sum. So obviously as a sum, we know that we're going to add something together. And to do that, we're going to add the number of apples, obviously the number of oranges, to get the sum of all the fruit we have. We're going to use the assignment character again, the equal sign. We're going to say int fruit sum is equal to number of apples. We're going to add that too, so use the plus sign, of oranges. And we're going to hit enter. So what's happened is Python has taken the value for number of apples and the value for number of oranges and added them together and assigned that integer to fruit sum. So the integer fruit sum, or int fruit sum, is going to equal to the 2 values added together. Now the way that we can prove that is we need to print the fruit sum variable. So we're going to go print. Now, a while ago when we did print hello world, we used quotation marks. That's because we were printing text. Here we're printing the value of a variable, so we don't have to use any quotations. We're going to go int fruit sum, no quotations of any kind, and when we hit enter, hopefully Python will print out the amount of fruit that we have. So let's hit enter, and sure enough, Python printed the number 8. The value of int number of apples was 5. The value of int number of oranges was 3. The fruit sum was apples plus oranges. We added them together and we printed out fruit sum. 5 plus 3 is 8. And so we have correctly written a program here to add up the number of fruit that we have. We have 5 apples. We have 3 oranges. If we add those together to get the sum, then we have 8 pieces of fruit. Now, that is the basic operation for arithmetic. This is also the basic outline for a program that you would use. We create our variables. We assign the receiving variable here. We assign it the value of our mathematical operation, in this case a sum or addition, and then we print it out. And so that works. Now I can, those variables are still in existence. I can change a variable and they still exist. So if I go int number of apples and I say now it's equal to 6, and I say int fruit sum is equal to int number of apples plus int number of oranges, and then I print that out. What I should see now is the same thing. Oranges hasn't changed, but I've added one more apple, which should add 1 to our sum from previous, which was 8, so it should go to 9. And sure enough, it does. It goes to 9. So we've added a value to another value, and then we changed that first value and added them again. So now, number of apples, until it changes again, is equal to 9. Also, you'll notice we use the addition symbol to add numbers. Let's go ahead and do some subtraction this time. We're going to use the same values, but this time we're going to say int fruit sum is equal to int number of apples, and we're going to use the minus sign. that one more time. And this time we're going to subtract. Our value for apples is 6. Our value for oranges is 3. We subtract 6 from 3. We should see the number 3 in our answer. And we do. So we know how to add now. We know how to subtract. And we know how to print the value of a variable. We just do print. Inside the parentheses, we put the parameter, variable name, whatever it is, and then when we hit enter, Python prints that out. All right, so we've learned addition and subtraction. Let's go ahead and do multiplication. We're going to leave the values the same. And this time we're going to go int. We're going to multiply, and that is shift 8. That's the asterisk. Multiplication in programming for most languages is going to be the asterisk symbol. So we're going to multiply the value of apples times the value of oranges. And since we haven't changed the values, one is 6 and the other's 3, we should see the number 18 here if we print it out. So we hit enter. Sure enough, there's the number 18. All right, one last mathematical operation. We're going to divide. We're going to divide the number of apples. Use that backslash. Get like a little fraction. Print that out. And when we do that, we're going to get, hopefully, the number 6 divided by the number 3, which should be 2. 2.0. Notice it added the decimal point. Anytime you do division in Python, it converts integers into a float. A float is just a number that has a decimal point, and the reason that it does that is because generally, unless you're very lucky, the numbers you divide are not going to divide evenly. And so if you just divided the integers for a language like Java, for example, when you do integer division, if we had divided 6 by 3, we would have gotten the number 2, which would have been an integer. But if we had divided, let's say in Python, we had divided the number 5, let's just go ahead and do that. I'm going to say, I'm going to change that back to 5. I'm going to divide that again. And this time we should get a decimal because 5 divided by 2 is not an even division. Oh, I forgot to print it. And 1.666667 is exactly what we should get if we, 5 divided by 3. 5 divided by 3 is 1.666667, and you'll notice how many decimal places it put. That's the standard number. You can make it more precise or less precise as you need to. You can round it up. But for the most part, that would tell us that. Now, had we done that, here's the funny thing, had we done that same program in Java, for example, programming in the Java language, we would have gotten the answer is the number 1. Because integer division in Java is not automatically assigned to a float. It's just assigned to an integer. And the way that it does that is it just truncates the decimals. So it would have just given us the number 1 and ignored the decimal completely. So Python is loosely typed. That means it doesn't care. It compensates for things like that. It doesn't really care what decimals or what variables you put in to what values you put into a variable. But there are some other things that we're going to learn that can trap you or trip you up. So we're going to look at that as we go along. But for right now, let's go back and kind of rehash what we've learned. Okay, so far we've learned, number 1, how to assign a variable. We've learned some rules about naming variables. We've learned some rules about doing simple mathematical operations, and we've had a little more practice with the print function. So basically what I want you to do now is to come up with your own variable names and duplicate this program. Basically, you're going to do exactly the same thing, but you're going to change the variable names, and you're going to assign different values. You're not going to use 5 and 3 or 6 and 3. Use different numbers, and but you're going to go ahead and do an addition and a subtraction and a multiplication and division problem, just like we did, using different variable names and different values. And then you're going to print those off. Once you're done, of course, you're going to do the same kind of screen capture that we did last time. You'll hit the print screen sysrec or use whatever screen capturing system you have available, but you're going to do a screen capture, and then you're going to turn it in for credit for the assignment. So good luck, and if you have any questions, please contact me through the Canvas through the Canvas inbox. Let me know if you're having trouble or what I can do to help, and I'll get in touch with you, and if nothing else, we can have a Zoom meeting, but I will help you in any way I can. Have a good day, and I'll see you in class.